Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Sandeep Brahmarothu. I'm a Global Business Development Manager within the Amazon Web Services team. I'm super excited to be here today to talk about database freedom and how to help you break free from commercial databases to AWS. We've got an action-packed agenda in terms of what we want to cover today, so let's get right into it. First, we'll talk about why are our customers looking to break free? What are the business drivers that our customers are looking at as they think about options to potentially modernize their data platforms. Next, we'll get into what are some of the common migration patterns our customers are seeing as they think about moving their databases from on-prem to the cloud and paths for modernization. There's really exciting options available on the platform. We'll get into what are some of those common patterns that we're seeing. Next, we're going to dive into how can we help you migrate? Like, what are some flexible options, tools, consulting partners, as well as programs to really help you in your journey with your database migrations? Then we'll talk about specifically how to break free and innovate faster, right? I will talk about the notion around the specific engines and options you have to select from as you think about modernizing your databases. And last but not least, we'll wrap up. We'll give you some specific guidance in terms of what does a typical migration journey look like? What are some steps that you could take, and also resources that you may want to look at as you embark on this journey. So let's talk about what are some drivers that our customers are seeing within IT, within the enterprise, that's really having them think about what's your data strategy look like moving forward. If you think about what's happening in the market and what's happening with data in general, there are three main fundamental drivers that we're seeing at a high level. The first is explosion of data or evolution of data. Over the last 5 or 10 years, data continues to grow, both in terms of volume of data our customers are generating, as well as seeking to store, analyze, process, and analyze, as well as a variety of different types of data. Right? It's no longer data that sits in a very nice, in a tight relational data model. It's looking at semi-structured data. It's looking at unstructured data. How do you sort of correlate these data together to get that business-driven insights to drive competitive advantage for you and your business? We're seeing changes in terms of how our customers are looking at their platforms and how they're leveraging newer innovations within IT around microservices. Right? Innovation is really important to our customers. Getting competitive advantage is really important in the respective markets. And so breaking down monolithic oriented data platforms into much more smaller, nimbler chunks allows our customers to be at the forefront and have that competitive edge, right? This is where we're seeing a rapid adoption of microservices. And to that, customers are really looking at monolithic data architectures and modernizing those that are much more aligned to new business processes that I just talked about. The third big thing that we're seeing is an accelerated sort of drive and adoption of DevOps. Right? Customers are rapidly iterating their processes and rapidly iterating new features that they want to bring to market. And they're adopting this new framework, a DevOps-oriented framework, that's also puts a focus back on the underlying data platform that supports this framework, right? Looking at platforms that is much more catered for them in terms of ability to iterate faster and picking the right purpose-built data engine for that specific use cases. These are at a very high level. We're seeing some of the mega trends that our customers are thinking about as you're thinking about, okay, what do I do with my existing commercial legacy platforms and how do I sort of modernize them? As you think about what are some of the other drivers that's really having our customers look at from a breaking free from legacy platform perspective, here's some specific thorns. Cost. Cost continues to be a big driver, and cost savings continues to be a big driver for a lot of our customers. How do I take cost out of supporting and maintaining and potentially even having to increase the footprint of these legacy platforms? Right? Customers are looking at ways to reduce dependency on proprietary platforms, platforms that have proprietary features that over time our customers have been building on top of, there'll be stored procedures, objects, what have you. They really want to break themselves free from these proprietary features, these locked-in features, and embrace the innovation that's happening within the open source and/or cloud-native data platforms. Punitive licensing is something that we continue to see a lot from our customer base, where customers are looking at ways to again really break free from kind of your traditional enterprise license model, and the ability to sort of add and spin up more resources and instances as your business requires, versus tied to a commercial sort of a contract that imposes punitive restrictions, if you will. Now, last but not least, we're also seeing some vendors kind of take a more of a approach with regards to audit, and that sort of puts off our customers, and they're looking again for ways for again having that freedom in terms of being able to deploy data resources as and when they need it. Again, these are some of the drivers. Maybe not all of them apply to you in your particular instance, but perhaps some of them do. So what are customers doing to move off of these legacy commercial platforms? We're seeing a rapid adoption of open source databases on the AWS platform. Nothing new. It's been going on for the last 10, 15 years. Platforms like MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB are some of the examples of platforms that we're seeing widely being adopted from an open source perspective. But as customers are moving enterprise workloads to these open source platforms, they're looking for the similar enterprise-grade performance and reliability, right? You're running mission-critical applications. You're running applications and work that are very, very important to your business. So customers don't want to sacrifice of these performance-grade, commercial-grade performance reliability features that they've been accustomed to on legacy platforms when they migrate to the open source engines. So that's really where AWS is kind of focusing on. Is we've taken the open source platforms and really added this enterprise functionality, which I'll touch on a little bit later on in the presentation, so that you're getting the best of both worlds, right? You're getting the open source goodness, but you're also getting the enterprise grade functionality and features. So at a high level, here's some of the benefits that our customers are seeing by moving their database workloads to the AWS platform. Increasing agility. We touched on this a little bit earlier. This notion of having ability to iterate on use cases and having platforms that can support that rapid rate of innovation and that agility is super important. And agility could be by spinning up and scaling up resources as and when needed, right? And increasing that agility provides that added benefit. Reducing cost is something that we just touched on. Again, spinning up resources as you need them, right, and spinning them down when you don't need them. And also not having to tie to a long-term commercial construct with the platform is an inherent benefit of adopting the AWS platform. Performance and scale is something that we take very seriously. Performance by way of adding more capability from a compute perspective as well as from a storage standpoint is absolutely critical. We'll touch on some of that stuff in some of the product-oriented messaging here shortly. Innovating faster, right? Agility and really translating into our customers no longer want to be restricted to what they have from a legacy infrastructure perspective. They want a modern infrastructure where they can innovate faster in a much more agile fashion, so that can drive competitive differentiation for them in their markets. So let's talk about what we're seeing at a high level, right? Some trends, but also, right, what are some common paths that our customers are seeing from a database migration standpoint. Today, we've seen over 200,000 customers that have migrated their databases from on-prem to AWS platform, and that number continues to increase rapidly at a pretty impressive rate. And all of that is really driven by some of the benefits that I talked about in the previous slide. And this is just by measurement of databases that are migrated, leveraging our database migration service, also known as DMS. So a lot of excitement in the market as customers are moving their workloads to the cloud, but also moving their data workloads and their databases, and we're seeing real strong traction with that movement. So let's talk about what are some of the common paths that customers are taking to AWS databases. So at a very high level, we see three main common patterns our customers take or options our customers have as they think about moving their databases from on-prem to the cloud. The first is really kind of your lift and shift, right? Customers are taking workloads as they run today on-prem. They're moving those workloads and leveraging our EC2 or our platform as the underlying infrastructure to run and self-manage the databases, right? This is something that's been going on for some time, and we see a lot of our customers do that. Still, here in this particular option, our customers are still self-managing these databases themselves, so they're not really getting the full benefit of the managed databases, as well as some of the native features that are built into our managed database platforms and our cloud-native database platforms. What we're seeing increasingly is our customers move to a managed platform or move to managed, right? So in the case of if you're running an Oracle or SQL Server on-prem, right, you could run it on EC2 yourself. But again, you haven't really fundamentally changed the way you're leveraging cloud. When you start moving it to a managed service like RDS or Relational Database Service for Oracle or SQL Server, or even an open source around MySQL, Postgres, and MariaDB, really you're starting to get the benefit associated with the managed services. Our customers no longer have to worry about some of the less differentiated sort of work around patching and updates and upgrades, things that backups, right, high availability. All of that stuff is sort of taken care of inherently with our managed databases platform. But the ultimate goal for a lot of our customers is really to adopt cloud native platforms, platforms that are built from ground to really work well within a cloud environment, and that's really where you see a lot of our customers truly break free from these commercial engines. As an example, here could be the Amazon Aurora platform, which is one of our fastest growing services that we have. We'll touch upon that here shortly. DynamoDB, another example of a purpose-built database engine that we're seeing a lot of traction from our customers, especially for web scale applications and workloads. Amazon Redshift, right, for workloads that are a little bit more analytical oriented or data warehouse oriented. These are just some examples. In fact, as part of AWS, you have a lot of different options to choose from as you think about modernizing your legacy workloads and what does that platform or option look like for you from a target perspective as you think about building that future platform within the cloud. So at a high level, again, our customers have multiple options, but really what we're seeing is that vision and that drive towards modernizing and moving towards these cloud native platforms. So as we think about the platform, right, there are a lot of different options you have that a couple I touched on, but AWS at a high level has a variety of different database and analytic options for you. And in fact, one of our key advantages is to really provide our customers with these purpose-built options, both on the databases as well as on the analytics side. I'm not going to go through every single one of these services that you see on this slide, but if you think about it just sort of on the database side, right, we have a variety of different workloads or engines, if you will, that supports a variety of different use cases. If it's a relational use case that's been sitting on a relational data model for the last 20 or 30 years, as you assess that, and if you believe that model should continue to stay in a relational model, right, we have a lot of different options within AWS native platform. Things like Aurora with MySQL and Postgres options. If it needs to be more of a non-relational, we have a variety of different non-relational options, including Amazon DynamoDB, which is a key value option, or DocumentDB, or Keyspaces, which is our managed Cassandra offering. These are just some of the examples that we have. In addition to that, we have some of the more exotic or some of the more native use cases around time series oriented, graph oriented, right, with Amazon Neptune or Amazon TimeStream. So these are just some examples of a variety of different database options you have to consider as you're looking to modernize, right? Most customers are now, as they're thinking about modernizing, they're looking at a platform that they can bet on over the next 5, 10, or 20 years. and in the past, everything looked like a relational model, like customers would shove everything into the same database. But now you truly do have the option, right? As you're breaking out and you're fanning out your monolithic application and workloads, you can fan out into purpose-built database engines so that you're getting the best processing options available to you for that particular workloads. I didn't really touch on in some of the analytics options here, but those are obviously some of the options for you to consider if your workloads are much more analytical oriented. That'd be more data warehousing or data lake oriented. So I want to touch on a couple engines real quick, and then we'll move into some of the more customer stories of customers who have successfully migrated off of legacy platforms onto AWS. So real quick on what is Amazon Aurora. So Amazon Aurora is really our MySQL and Postgres compatible relational database, right? Built ground up for the cloud with the focus around performance, availability, at a significantly lower cost relative to a commercial database that most customers have deployed over the years. Some of the key tenets around the Amazon platform is really around performance and scalability, which I just touched on. Providing that enterprise-grade availability and durability is very critical, especially for these OLTP and transactional workloads our customers are running and looking to run. Security is another key enterprise requirement that our customers have asked for, as well as the ability to have it fully managed for you by AWS, right? So Amazon Aurora, we're seeing as a very popular target for a lot of our customers, especially when they're looking at modernizing legacy database workloads from an Oracle or SQL Server as an example, and they're looking to kind of put that relational model in a more cloud-native oriented platform. As you think about those workloads, if the workload is really more of a non-relational workload, it should, it's more of a, for example, it's more of a web scale oriented workload where it's, the focus is really around latency, right? Or data ingest, right? High rate of data ingest. Amazon DynamoDB is a great option. What we're seeing, a lot of our customers use Amazon DynamoDB, again, for that performance at scale, that serverless architecture, so that you don't have to do some of the, again, the traditional hardware provisioning, things of that nature, the enterprise security that I talked about, the replication element of it, and also the managed service, right? So these are just a couple examples. I'm not going through every single one of our database options that we have available to offer, but these are a couple very common paths our customers take as they're looking to move off of legacy commercial platforms. So how can we help you, in terms of breaking free from legacy platforms? So those are three fundamental ways that I want to touch on. And one is around migration tooling. So what are the tools that we have available for you to take advantage of? What are the resources through our professional services and migration partners? And what programs do we have to offer to help you in this journey? So let's start with migration tools. So if you look at our migration tools, specifically cater towards database migrations in general, there are two main tools that you would come into play. One is the Database Migration Service, also known as DMS, and the other being the AWS Schema Conversion Tool, or SET. So Database Migration Service has been around over 4 years now. It's a very common tool that our customers use to easily and securely migrate the data, right? From your legacy, databases that you have on-prem to AWS. Customers also use it for replication. Very common approach. It's a managed service that we have to offer on the AWS platform, and it's native to the platforms, and it supports a wide array of database sources as well as database targets on the AWS platform. So I highly encourage you to kind of double click on that and learn more about it, because that's a very common way that we see a lot of our customers use when they're moving database workloads to the cloud. Schema Conversion Tool is also comes in very handy. As the name stands for itself, what it does is it converts the schemas associated with the traditional databases and data warehouses, right, to, for example, like open source engines or cloud native database engines like Aurora MySQL or Aurora Postgres, as an example. Very common tool. This is also a tool that's available on our website, that available for free for you to download to do this conversion. Obviously, you want to convert the schema before you move the data into the target. So these two tools kind of go hand in hand. The schema conversion tool also is very popular with our customers to actually do the initial assessment of the database. How complex is this migration, right? How much store procedures do I have, and how much of that can be automatically converted by the schema conversion tool versus manually having to do that conversion yourselves. So great tool for both assessment and the schema conversion, and then the DMS tool kind of comes into play to do the actual data conversion itself, or the data migration itself. Here are a couple common paths. The DMS on the left-hand side, as I mentioned, we support a variety of different sources and targets. In this particular chart, on the top, we're seeing an Oracle source using DMS and moving that to example. It could be Oracle on EC2 or RDS Oracle, or it could be a heterogeneous migration pattern as well, right? And taking an Oracle or SQL Server workload, using schema conversion tool to do the assessment and figure out, for example, like what's the best likely target that you should move to on the AWS side, and convert that schema, and then use DMS to move the data itself to something like an Amazon Aurora, as an example. I highly encourage you to kind of spin up DMS and play around with it. Lots of great tutorials online available to you to kind of get going with these database migration patterns. And as I mentioned with schema conversion tool, again, it's a tool that you can download from our website. You point it to a source database, and then it'll do the discovery and the assessment of that. And then once you decide where you want to convert it to, you can convert that schema over to that target database. Great for heterogeneous migrations. So let's talk about migrating with our professional services and partners. AWS has an organization called our Professional Services Organization. Helps a lot of our customers with their cloud migrations, moving their on-prem workloads to the cloud. Within that, we have a specific focus around database migrations, right? As customers are moving tons of applications, they're also moving a lot of database workloads, and we have that expertise to help provide to you, as and when needed. In addition to that, we have a large slew of partners that are able to help our customers do with these migrations, and some of these partners are listed on this particular URL, so please take a look at it. Partners that have demonstrated expertise in our migration tools like DMS and SCT, but also customers who've done these both homogeneous migrations like for like, or heterogeneous migrations, where you're effectively changing the underlying source database to a new target database on the platform. So let's talk about, from a programmatic perspective, right? What are some ways that we can help you with your database migrations, to helping you break free from your legacy platforms? Database Freedom program is one such program within AWS that's really focused on helping your customers accelerate their migrations off of the legacy platforms such as Oracle and SQL Server, right? Those are just two examples, and to our cloud native platforms, so things like Aurora that I talked about, with open source compatibility with MySQL and Postgres, as an example. So Database Freedom is effectively a migration program within AWS that provides you with the level of expertise that you need around going through these migrations and advice to our customers. It's focusing around the tooling that our customers need, both from the assessment perspective and also providing the right level of incentives to help address some of the migration costs associated with it. There's a link at the end of the presentation to learn more about what the Database Freedom program is that you would want to double click on to understand more what options you have available as you kind of go through this migration journey. And as you talk about migration journey, let me just spend just a few moments on what does that typical database migration journey look like for our customers when they're thinking about database migration. There are effectively three main phases our customers generally go through. It's the assess phase, where what you're really doing in the assess phase is, again, assessing what you currently have, the number of databases, right? Number of stored procedures in these databases, the number of custom objects that you have in these databases, the sizes of these databases, what are the I/O characteristics, what are the compute requirements, right? Really having a good feel for what you currently have in your environment is super important, because that will then help you figure out and rationalize a migration plan and a strategy, right? What databases should be lift and shift that we talked about, right? What databases should stay on these commercial engines for a variety of different reasons, maybe application dependencies or complexity, so staying on an RDS commercial engine platform. And what database workloads are great for modernizing to an open source alternative, like an Aurora as an example, or leveraging a cloud native database like an DynamoDB, right? So assessment is super important. So that discovery and that initial analysis from a TCO perspective is something that our customers start with as a starting point. Once you sort of put your arms around that assess phase, it's really then moving into mobilize, right? This is where our customers are really trying to do a more detailed planning of what databases to go where, setting up the appropriate landing zones, developing the right skill set so that you have better understanding of our tools, as well as the target database engines, if you're not too familiar with some of the more native engines, and really setting up that plan and that operating model so that you can do a very fast rinse and repeat in terms of these migration. On the third phase is really that execution phase of your migration, right? Once you get it all set up and mobilized, it's really that migrate and modernize because our customers are now doing this at a much larger scale. This is at a very high level. What we see our customers go through is, again, to kind of recap, right? The assessment phase, the detailed planning and mobilize, and then the actual execution of the migration plan itself in the migration and modernize phase. So now let's double click on a few customer examples of who's actually done some of these migrations. So the first one I want to talk about is one of our customers called Verisk. Their challenge is they've got a ton of different Oracle and SQL Server databases, and they have challenges in terms of meeting their compliance and performance requirements of running analytics in various regions of the world, right? Where they didn't have the presence or the data center presence or the physical presence to be able to support this regionally. So the solution that they looked at was, again, looking at they migrated Oracle and SQL Server databases to Amazon Aurora. Those are the reasons that we talked about, right? It's around the performance, the speed, the latency of these databases were very, very attractive for them. And this is one of the quotes that they were able to do. As a result of the migration itself, right? They were now able to deliver a much more responsive, scalable, and highly available platform for their customers. This particular site, again, it's really an Oracle to Aurora migration, a very, very common pattern that we see for customers that are looking to break free from Oracle, right? Aurora tends to be a great sort of a cloud-native platform to consider. The next one is DHI, another customer that was running legacy Oracle database, but cost was a significant driver for them, as well as a restricted with the punitive licensing tactic that I talked about before. So they migrated these workloads to a combination of both Aurora as well as Amazon Redshift, right? Not uncommon, some of these workloads as you're looking to migrate off of, some may be transactional, others may be more analytical oriented. So we see customers, again, picking the right purpose-built database engine for their particular workload. A great example there as well, coming off of Oracle, breaking free to both Aurora and Redshift. Best Western is another example, a fairly well-known hotel chain. They've got lots of data that they have to process, and also reservations that they have to store, process, and analyze, and in a much more, performance-oriented fashion. In this particular example, they were running Oracle RAC. They had over 168 cores of Oracle, and they were, it was costing them a lot of money. So part of what they had to do was not only was this thing super important from a data processing perspective, right, but also driving costs down to help them, save money and invest that back in their business. So by moving this particular workload to the Amazon platform, really allowed them to, again, get that benefit of what Amazon Aurora allowed them to do. JobWhite is another great example. This is coming off of SQL Server. Again, their challenge for them was expensive. It was too slow from a performance perspective. It was taking up over 20 hours from a refresh standpoint, and they required regular database maintenance, right? And that's one of the things I talked about is with our managed services, our customers are getting, that benefit, so they don't have to worry about that maintenance overhead, right? Having to manage the databases themselves. and we're able to provide that faster speed at a much lower cost point. So this is a great example of the customer migrating off of SQL Server to Aurora MySQL. Globe is another great example. It's the telco out of Southeast Asia. Large customer paying over $1 million of worth of Oracle licenses. So that particular portion of the Oracle footprint, they migrated over to Aurora PostgreSQL, right? Again, open source compatible. And they were able to do that very fast, right? And go through the assessment phase. They were able to identify the right workloads to migrate. And within 7 months, they were able to sort of go through that process without interruptions or their SLAs from their service quality perspective, right? Great example here where our customers were able to realize significant cost savings in a very short period of time. So hopefully this gives you some perspective on some of the customer examples that we have here for you to consider of customers, again, doing it for a variety of different reasons to break free. It's cost savings, it's performance, it's less maintenance that they have to do themselves, and also gives you some perspective today on some of the tools and the processes and programs we have available for you to leverage in your database migration journey. So to get started, highly encourage you to kind of look at some of the resources that we have around our databases or on the database migration service, the Database Freedom program. Like, what is it? What does that benefits entail? And the partners that you could reach out to help you with this journey. And finally, highly encourage you to look at our training and certification. There are lots of great courses that you can leverage there for you to consume as well as take. And get certified, right? Again, the more you know about these platforms, the more comfortable you get, and the more likely you are to embrace and adopt these cloud-native platforms. With that said, I really want to thank you for taking the time. I know we covered a lot of ground. I apologize if I went too fast, but I'm super excited to have and share that information with you. If you have these legacy platforms, I highly encourage you to start off with the schema conversion tool, start to run that assessment, get a data-driven analysis of what that would take for you to really break free and achieve database freedom. With that, I really want to thank you and appreciate your time today.